The starship Luminary drifted through the quiet stretch of space known as the Silver Expanse, its golden hull reflecting the light of distant stars. Inside the ship, Aurelian crew members moved with calm control, unaware that danger was already approaching them. Princess Ceres Aurelian stood near the observation window, her violet eyes fixed on the shimmering nebula outside. She had spent her life surrounded by guards, advisors, and carefully planned schedules. But moments like this, moments of quiet, were precious to her. She didn't know that these peaceful minutes were about to end. Without warning, the ship shook as if struck by an invisible hand. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the floor trembled under her feet. Ceres grabbed the edge of a chair to steady herself. Through the window, she saw 3 dark, jagged ships emerge from the shadows of the nebula. They were unmistakable. Targathi raiders. The Targathi were feared across several star systems for their aggression and unpredictable attacks. Their ships were fast, their weapons strong, and they followed no laws but their own. The Luminary was a diplomatic vessel, not a warship. It had few weapons, and even fewer soldiers. Ceres felt her heartbeat quicken as the ship shook again, this time harder. Her guards rushed toward her, urging her to move to a safe room, but she froze when she saw sparks burst from a console nearby. Panic rose across the bridge. One of the officers shouted, "We cannot outrun them. Engines are damaged." 9. Ceres heard fear in their voices, fear she had never heard from the proud Aurelian crew. Meanwhile, not far away, a small human envoy ship, called the Vanguard, received a distress signal. Captain Elias Wren was on the bridge when the alert flashed across his screen. Humans were new to the wider galaxy. Their ships were smaller and their territory much younger compared to the ancient Aurelian Empire. But humans had gained a reputation for acting quickly, sometimes too quickly, for the liking of other species. Elias read the distress call, recognized the Aurelian insignia, and made a decision before his officers could even ask. "Plot a course to the coordinates," he ordered. "Full speed." His second-in-command, Mara Delone, raised an eyebrow. "Those are Aurelian royal codes. If we get involved, and something goes wrong, then we keep something from going wrong," Elias said simply. "Move us in." The Vanguard jumped into motion. When they arrived near the Luminary, the scene immediately became clear. The Aurelian ship was under heavy attack, its shields flickering like pale light against the Targathi blasts. Elias didn't hesitate. "Open a channel to the Luminary," he said. Static filled the speakers for a moment before a voice came through, shaky but alive. "This is Captain Varus of the Luminary. We are under attack. Engines offline. Request." A burst of noise cut off his words. "Request any assistance. You have help?" Elias replied. "Stand by. Stand by." Human ships lacked the heavy firepower of larger empires, but they were known for clever engineering and unusual tactics. Elias leaned forward in his chair, eyes sharp. "Mara, prepare the magnet well projectors." She blinked in surprise. "Captain, we've only tested that system in simulations." "Good enough," Elias said with a faint smile. "Let's give the Targathi something new to worry about." The Targathi ships closed in for another strike when the Vanguard powered up. The projectors released a sudden field of compressed magnetic force. It erupted outward like an invisible wave, disrupting the path of the nearest raider ship. Its engines sputtered, and the vessel swerved off course, smashing into its partner. The third raider fired at the Vanguard. But Elias's ship moved fast, weaving through the blasts. Mara monitored the readings nervously. "Projectors overheating. Just need a few more seconds," Elias said. He activated the second pulse. The wave hit the remaining Targathi ship with sudden force, knocking its weapon systems offline. The ship spun out of control, drifting helplessly. The Aurelian crew watched from their screens, stunned. They had expected a human ship to retreat. Instead, a single, small vessel had just disarmed 3 raiders without firing any lethal weapons. On the luminary, Princess Saris stared at the tactical display in disbelief. She had heard that humans were unpredictable, but she had not expected this kind of bravery. The guards finally guided her toward the emergency bay as the raiders withdrew into hyperspace, disappearing as quickly as they had arrived. The vanguard sent a final message. "This is Captain Elias Wren. Your attackers have retreated. We are sending a shuttle to assist with repairs and medical aid." When Elias reached the luminary aboard his shuttle, he stepped onto the damaged deck and looked around. Sparks still flickered from broken panels. Aurelian officers moved quickly to stabilize systems. But what caught his attention the most was the quiet figure walking toward him. Princess Saris, dressed in a simple but elegant uniform, studied him with careful eyes. She had never spoken to a human before. Yet here stood one who had saved her ship with nothing more than determination and a daring idea. Elias bowed politely, not knowing the exact customs but trying anyway. "Princess Saris, I'm glad you're safe. You arrived when no one else could," she said softly. "And you acted without hesitation." He shrugged slightly. "Someone needed help. That's enough for me." "Mind." Her expression shifted, almost confused, as if she didn't understand how a person could be so direct. Among the Aurelians, every action carried political weight. But this human acted simply because it was right. She found that refreshing. Elias helped the crew repair some of the power relays, working shoulder to shoulder with Aurelian engineers who had never seen human tools up close. They exchanged curious looks, whispering among themselves about the bold captain. Hours later, when the worst of the damage was repaired and the ship was stable, Saris approached Elias again. This time, her voice held genuine gratitude. "You saved many lives today, including mine." "I'm just glad we were nearby," he replied. "You were more than nearby," she said. "You were willing." Elias smiled at that. "Well, that's humanity for you." Saris felt something shift inside her, a small spark of interest in a species she had never paid attention to before. Humanity was young, small, and underestimated by her people. But today, a human had shown courage, speed, and invention that none of her own officers had managed. And this moment, this unexpected rescue, would change the future of 2 civilizations. She didn't know it yet. Elias didn't know it either. But the galaxy would soon echo with the story of the human who saved a princess. And the consequences of that single act were only beginning. The news of the luminary's rescue spread across the Aurelian Empire faster than anyone expected. Messages flowed between star systems. Officials whispered in council halls, and even distant colonies heard the same unbelievable rumor. A human captain had saved the heir to the Aurelian throne. Many Aurelians did not believe it at first. To them, humans were still newcomers, bright, curious, and stubborn, but not important enough to change the course of the empire. But the princess had survived, the raiders had failed, and the name Elias Wren was suddenly known in places he had never even visited. When the luminary finally reached the capital world Aurun Prime, the royal shuttle arrived to bring Princess Saris home. Saris looked back once before boarding, her gaze settling on the vanguard resting quietly beside the damaged Aurelian vessel. It looked small compared to the massive ships around it, but in her memory, she would always see it as the spark of hope that arrived in their darkest moment. She remembered Elias's simple words. "Someone needed help. That's enough for me." Most people in her life acted because they had to. He acted because he chose to. On Aurun Prime, the Emperor waited with his council. Emperor Cador Aurelian was tall, dignified, and known for ruling with the kind of calm authority that made entire fleets obey his command. When Saris stepped out of the shuttle, he embraced her, relief softening the lines of his face. "You are unharmed." he said quietly. Yes, father, she replied. Because of a human. The emperor had already heard the reports, but hearing it directly from his daughter made the truth heavier. He guided her into the grand hall where nobles and officers waited. They bowed to her, then turned their eyes toward the human crew, who arrived behind her. Elias stood among his officers, feeling the weight of every stare. The hall was enormous, with tall, silver pillars and glowing banners showing the royal crest. Humans had been guests in many places before, but standing inside the heart of the Aurelian Empire felt different. He felt both small and strangely proud. The emperor stepped forward, studying Elias with a gaze sharp enough to break stone. You are Captain Elias Wren, he said. Yes, your majesty, Elias replied, keeping his voice steady. You saved my daughter and her ship when no one else was near, the emperor said. I did what anyone should do, sir, Elias answered. A murmur passed through the nobles. Some were impressed. Others looked offended. Aurelians were used to formal responses, polished words, and carefully measured tones. Elias's honest simplicity felt unusual to them, but the emperor smiled slightly, only a little, but it was enough to shock half the room. Humans, he said, are full of surprises. Saris watched the exchange with quiet interest. She noticed the way Elias stood, not arrogant, not intimidated, just present. She noticed how he did not bow too deeply or flatten himself out of fear. He respected the emperor, but he also respected himself. That was rare among those who visited the royal hall. The council proceeded to question Elias about the battle. He described the attack clearly, giving credit to his crew more often than he took it for himself. Saris listened carefully, appreciating how he remembered even the smallest details. The emperor listened too, and at the end, he rose from his seat. Captain Elias Wren, he said, your actions have prevented great tragedy. My daughter lives because of your courage. Elias nodded politely. I'm honored, sir, but I must consider something greater than honor. The emperor continued. His voice grew deeper, echoing across the hall. Your bravery has shown me that the time between our species should not be shaped by old assumptions. We need stronger unity. The nobles shifted, sensing something unusual coming. The emperor stood tall, his robe catching the light as he spoke words no one expected. For the sake of alliance between humanity and the Aurelian Empire, I decree that Princess Saris Aurelian will be formally betrothed to Captain Elias Wren. Quote. The hall went silent. Not a sound, not a breath. Elias stared, completely stunned. Saris froze in disbelief. Even the council members looked at one another as if they were trying to decide whether they had heard correctly. The emperor's voice filled the silence. This union will symbolize trust and cooperation between our peoples. It will bring strength to both sides. Elias stepped forward slightly, unable to stop himself. Your Majesty, I don't mean disrespect, but I didn't save the princess for any reward. And marriage, this kind of commitment, should be a choice, not a duty. The nobles gasped at his directness, but the emperor simply watched him with steady eyes. Saris felt her heart beat faster. Elias had said exactly what she wanted to say, but she couldn't, not in front of the entire court. For her whole life, her decisions had been shaped by duty. Yet now this human captain was standing in the middle of a royal hall, challenging a decree that even she found overwhelming. When the emperor did not answer immediately, the hall grew colder from tension. Finally, he spoke. Your words show the same courage that saved my daughter. But understand this. Alliances must sometimes begin with bold steps. Elias held his ground. I respect the alliance, but your daughter's future is not a tool. A few guards stepped forward instinctively, but the emperor lifted his hand and they stopped. Saris watched this human captain speak without fear. defending her freedom more than any noble ever had. He barely knew her, yet he respected her as a person. It was both confusing and strangely comforting. The Emperor's expression remained unreadable. After a long pause, he said, "Very well. The betrothal is announced, but I will not force the final decision today. You and Princess Ceres may speak privately." Ceres released a breath she did not realize she had been holding. A guard led Elias to a side chamber, and Ceres followed. When the door closed behind them, the noise of the hall disappeared, leaving them in a quiet room filled with soft light. Elias rubbed the back of his neck, still processing the decree. "Neither did I," Ceres said. "My father has always thought about the future of the Empire first, but this—" She paused, searching for the right words. "He didn't ask what I wanted." "I'm sorry," Elias said gently. "You didn't," she replied. "You saved my life. The trouble came afterward." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Ceres spoke again, her voice calm. "Captain Elias, I don't know what my father hopes for, but I want to understand something. You questioned him. You questioned a decree in front of the whole court. No one has done that before." "I just said what I believed," Elias answered. "And that," she said quietly, "is why I want to speak with you more. Not as a princess and a captain, but as two people who were thrown into something unexpected." Elias gave a small smile. "I'd like that." Ceres returned the smile. It was small, but real. They both knew the Emperor's decree had changed the path of their lives, but they also knew something important. The final decision was still theirs to make, not anyone else's, and their choices would shape not only their futures, but the future of two civilizations. The next few days on Orion Prime were filled with tension that no one could ignore. The Emperor's decree traveled across the Empire like a storm. Some worlds celebrated the idea of a new alliance with the humans. Others whispered doubts and anger, insisting that a princess should not be tied to a species they still saw as unpredictable and inexperienced. Every message that came into the palace carried a new opinion, and the council members argued more loudly than ever. Through all this noise, Princess Ceres and Captain Elias met several times to talk privately, trying to understand their situation. Their conversations were calm but complicated. Ceres wanted honesty, not polite words. Elias wanted clarity, not royal rules. Slowly, they began to understand each other better. One afternoon, Ceres guided Elias through one of the palace gardens. Tall, crystalline trees glowed softly, their leaves catching the sunlight in shifting colors. Birds with shimmering wings flew overhead. Elias looked around with quiet amazement, realizing how different this world was from the simple forests of Earth. "I used to play here when I was a child," Ceres said, touching a tree gently. "I always felt safe here. Now everything feels uncertain." Elias walked beside her. "Because of the decree?" "Yes," she replied. "My father has always done what he thinks is best for the Empire. He believes this alliance will protect us from future threats, but he didn't think about what it means for me." Elias nodded. "And he didn't think about what it means for me either." She looked at him with concern. "Are humans speaking about you?" "Oh yes," Elias said with a small laugh. "My commanders are confused. Some are proud, some worried. Others think I've somehow started a political disaster by accident." Ceres smiled slightly, then grew serious again. "Elias, do you regret saving us?" He turned to her. "Never. I'd do it again." She held his gaze for a moment before looking down at the glowing path beneath their feet. "I'm glad," she whispered. Their quiet moment ended abruptly when a guard rushed toward them, breathless. "Princess Ceres," he said urgently, "Your Highness must return to the council chamber at once. There has been a threat." Ceres's eyes widened. "Threat? To whom?" "To you, Princess, and to Captain Elias." Elias immediately stepped forward. Explain. The guard swallowed nervously. Security intercepted an encrypted message. Someone has been sending information to the Targathi. They mentioned the princess, the human captain, and the decree. The message, unseens to woe. The message, unseens to woe. The message. Saris felt a chill run through her. They want to stop the alliance. The guard nodded. And they may already be inside the palace. They hurried to the council chamber. The emperor stood at the center, surrounded by advisors and security officers. The atmosphere was tense, thick with worry. When Saris and Elias entered, the emperor turned toward them. You both must hear this, he said. An officer activated a projection. Lines of decoded text appeared in the air. Threatening, cold, and unmistakable. The message spoke of destabilizing the empire, of stopping the union between humans and Aurelians, and of using any means necessary to do so. It also revealed something far more dangerous. The attack on the luminary had not been random. Elias stepped closer, reading quickly. So someone on the inside helped the Targathi plan the ambush. Precisely, the emperor said. And this same group now wants to eliminate both of you. Saris felt anger rise in her chest. Why? Why go so far? The emperor faced her, his voice heavy. Because the idea of unity threatens those who profit from division. Elias understood immediately. Someone inside your ranks doesn't want peace. They want control. The council began to argue, voices rising in fear and confusion. But Elias looked at Saris, and Saris looked at him. They both felt the same thing. A shared determination. They could not let this threat grow. When the room finally quieted, Elias spoke. We need to find whoever is sending the transmissions. A senior advisor shook his head. It could be anyone. A guard, an officer, a noble. We have thousands of personnel. Then narrow it down, Elias said. Focus on those who had access to the princess's travel plans before the ambush. Anyone who stood to lose political power from an alliance. Anyone who has unusual connections to Targathi traders. The emperor raised an eyebrow. You think like a soldier and a strategist. I think like someone who wants Saris safe, Elias replied, before he could stop himself. Saris's heart skipped for a moment at his words, though he meant them honestly and simply. The emperor nodded. Very well. We will investigate. But the threat is active, and I will not risk my daughter's life. Saris stepped forward, her voice firm. Father, hiding will not solve anything. We need to expose them. It is too dangerous, the emperor said. Elias spoke again, careful but confident. Your Majesty, Saris is right. Whoever planned the ambush expects fear. They expect silence. But if we gather information carefully, they might expose themselves. The emperor looked between them, his expression thoughtful. Finally, he agreed. I will allow you both to assist in the investigation under supervised protection. The next few days were tense. Saris and Elias worked with trusted officers to trace the transmissions. They reviewed logs, questioned personnel, and followed trails that always seemed to end just before the truth. Someone was covering their tracks well. One night, while reviewing data in a quiet security room, Elias noticed a strange pattern in the transmission routes. This relay station, he said, pointing at the display. It's been used 3 times, always during shifts controlled by the same official. Saris leaned closer. Who? The name appeared, Counselor Riven Marak. Saris gasped softly. He's been advising my father for years. He claims to support the alliance. That might be the problem, Elias said. He supports it publicly. But privately. He fears losing power, Saris finished. Before they could say more, the lights flickered. A silent alarm flashed on the screen. Unauthorized entry detected. Elias pulled Saris behind a console, as footsteps echoed down the hallway outside. Shadows moved, and voices whispered. It was clear. They were not friendly. Elias whispered, "They know we discovered something." Saris nodded, heart pounding. Suddenly, a blast shook the door. Someone was trying to force it open. Elias grabbed Saris's hand. "We have to move. Now." They slipped out a side exit just as the door broke open behind them. Running through dim corridors, they heard shouts from the attackers. Quick and sharp. They were being hunted. They reached a stairwell and hurried down toward the main hall. Elias pressed a communication button on the wall. "This is Captain Elias Wren. Security breach in lower wing. Enemy inside the palace." The system crackled and then died. "They cut the lines," Saris said. "Then we warn your father ourselves," Elias replied. They ran together, their steps echoing through the vast palace halls. Behind them, the traitors followed, growing closer with every second. Saris pushed herself faster. Elias stayed at her side, determined not to let anything happen to her. They didn't know it yet, but this chase would reveal truths far more dangerous than a simple conspiracy. And it would change their connection forever. Elias and Saris moved as fast as they could through the palace corridors, footsteps pounding against the polished floors. Behind them, distant shouts echoed, growing louder as the traitors chased them. The palace was large, full of twisting halls and quiet chambers. But tonight, it felt like a maze that refused to offer safety. Saris kept glancing over her shoulder. "They're getting closer." Elias listened carefully. "We can't outrun them forever. We need to outsmart them." He looked around quickly. On the left side of the hallway was a door leading to a communication terminal room. A narrow chamber with long consoles and tall windows overlooking the city. "This way," he said. They rushed inside and locked the door behind them. The room was dark except for the glow of screens. Saris leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Elias walked to the nearest console and tried activating the emergency broadcast system. Nothing. "It's offline," he said. "They shut down all transmissions in this wing." Saris joined him, scanning the systems. "We might still be able to reroute through an older channel." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Older? The palace is centuries old." Saris explained quickly. "Some backup lines run beneath the structure. They were made long before our current systems." She opened a hidden panel beneath the console. A small black interface glowed softly. "This one still works," she said. Elias gave her a small, impressed smile. "Lead the way." Together, they typed in commands, trying to send a signal directly to the Emperor's private receiver. Saris worked quickly, fingers steady, even though her breath was still uneven from running. But before the message could send, the lights flickered again. Heavy footsteps approached from the other side of the door. "They found us," Elias whispered. Saris tried to push the final command, but the system shut down completely. The traitors had cut the last connection. The door shook violently as someone hit it from the outside. Elias grabbed Saris gently but firmly. They ran through another exit at the back of the room, a narrow route used mostly by palace technicians. The moment they stepped inside, the lights turned red as alerts activated. Saris guided them through winding metal pathways and maintenance stairs. "There's one place they won't expect us to go." "Where?" Elias asked. "The observation spire. It's high, hard to reach, and has a direct security line to my father." He nodded. They climbed several levels until they reached a long, curved hallway leading into the tall spire tower. The walls here were made of transparent crystal, showing the shining city of Auron Prime below them, tall towers, glowing sky lanes, and thousands of lights stretching to the horizon. Even in danger, Elias paused for a brief moment. "Your world is beautiful." Saris gave him a small, tired smile. "I want it to stay that way." A sudden noise behind them broke the moment. The traitors had reached the hallway. "Run," Elias said. They sprinted toward the entrance of the observation spire. As they entered the circular chamber, Saris rushed to the main console and activated the emergency seal. Thick metal barriers closed across the doorway, blocking the attackers for now. Elias stood guard as Saris tried again to contact her father. This time, the system responded. A secure channel flashed open, and the Emperor's voice came through immediately. "Saris? Are you hurt?" "I'm safe for now," she said quickly. "But there are traitors inside the palace. They helped plan the attack on the luminary, and they're trying to stop the alliance." The Emperor's voice hardened. "I suspected something, but not this deeply." "They're coming for us," Elias added. "We're in the observation spire, but we won't hold for long." The Emperor responded at once. "Stay there. Loyal forces are already on the way." The transmission ended. Saris fell silent, staring out the tall windows. Elias joined her. "We'll make it. Reinforcements are coming." "I know," she said softly. "But this isn't just about survival, Elias. This is proof that someone inside our government wants chaos. They want war. And Erlime." Elias nodded. "Then we need to reveal the truth. All of it." Before Saris could answer, a loud crash echoed from behind the sealed door. The traitors had brought cutting tools and were slicing through the barrier. Sparks flew, lighting up the hallway. Elias stepped forward. "I'll block them." Saris grabbed his arm. "You can't fight all of them alone." "Maybe not," he said with a determined look. "But I can slow them down." The door glowed red as the metal weakened. Saris whispered, "Please don't risk yourself for me again without thinking." Elias met her eyes. "Saving you isn't a risk. It's something I choose." She didn't know what to say. Her heart tightened. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, both steady, both scared, but unwilling to back down. The door burst open with a shower of sparks. Several armored figures rushed in, their movements sharp and practiced. Elias pushed Saris behind a console and stood firm, using whatever he could find to block their path. Despite being outnumbered, he moved quickly, dodging strikes, using the environment to his advantage, forcing the attackers to spread out. Saris activated defensive barriers around the room, slowing their advance. "You're making this difficult," one of the traitors shouted. "That's the idea," Elias replied, dodging a blow. The fight spread across the chamber. Saris managed to trigger security countermeasures, releasing bursts of defensive light that forced the traitors to shield their eyes. Elias used the moment to push one of them back, knocking another off balance. But more traitors kept entering. Saris felt fear rise again. She activated another barrier, her fingers shaking. "Elias, we can't hold them much longer." "Just a little more," he said. Just then, the chamber shook from a sudden impact, not from the traitors, but from outside. A distant roar rose through the air as bright beams shot down from above. Reinforcements had arrived. The Emperor's elite guard stormed into the hallway, overwhelming the traitors with swift precision. One by one, they were disarmed and forced to surrender. Within minutes, the spire was secured. Saris collapsed to her knees in relief. Elias let out a breath and sank against the wall, exhausted but smiling. The Emperor arrived moments later, surrounded by loyal guards. His eyes softened when he saw Saris safe, then shifted toward Elias with deep respect. "You both fought bravely," he said, "and your courage has revealed the truth. These traitors will face justice." The days following the attack on the observation spire were filled with investigation, arrests, and uneasy silence in the palace. The traitors were removed from their positions, and messages were sent across the empire to assure the people that order had been restored. But even as the threat faded, questions still hung in the air. Questions about the future, about alliances, and about the decree that had started everything. Elias and Saris found themselves at the center of every discussion. Their names appeared in every report, every council meeting, and every whisper in the hallways. Some citizens believed the betrothal was destiny. Others thought it was political pressure, and some claimed it was only symbolic, meant to strengthen peace. But none of these people understood what Elias and Saris understood now. Their choices mattered more than any decree. They had faced danger together, trusted each other in moments when everything seemed lost, and discovered a connection built on courage and honesty, not tradition. On the morning of the official ceremony, the palace was bright with banners and soft golden light. Crowds filled the plaza outside, waiting for news. Inside, nobles and diplomats took their seats in the grand hall. Elias stood alone in a quiet room, adjusting the formal dark blue uniform he had been given. He stared at his reflection in the mirror. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a royal hall. He looked like a soldier who had seen danger, who had made difficult choices, who had simply tried to do what was right. A soft knock came at the door. Sarah stepped in, dressed in a flowing silver gown that reflected the palace lights. She looked calm, but Elias could see something thoughtful in her eyes. "You look uncomfortable," she said gently. Elias gave a short laugh. "That obvious?" "Very," she said with a small smile. Then she grew more serious. "Elias, I want to talk to you. Before we enter the hall." He nodded and stepped closer. "I want to talk too." They stood facing each other. Two people from different worlds, brought together by events neither could have predicted. Saris spoke first. "This ceremony today, it feels like a decision everyone expects us to make. Not a decision we chose ourselves." "I know," Elias said. "I don't want your life to be shaped by something forced." Saris took a slow breath. "The past few days showed me something important. You protected me, not because you were ordered to. You protected me because it was the right thing to do. You argued with my father because you believed I should have a voice. You risked your life because you chose to stand with me. We can life." Elias looked at her carefully. "And I'd do it again. Every time." Her expression softened. "I know. And that's why I don't want us to accept anything today without making our own choice. Not the council's choice. Not the Empire's choice. Ours." Elias nodded slowly. "I agree. Whatever we decide, it has to come from us." Saris smiled, relieved. For the first time since the decree, she felt truly in control of her future. They walked together toward the grand hall. The doors opened, and the crowd inside turned to watch them. The emperor stood at the front, wearing ceremonial robes, his expression unreadable. As Elias and Saris reached the center of the hall, a respectful hush fell over the room. The emperor raised his hand for silence. "Today," he announced, "we gather to honor courage, unity, and the future of our empire." He looked directly at Saris, then at Elias. "My decree was made with the intention of peace, but peace must be built on choice, not command. And today, the final decision does not belong to me. It belongs to them." A ripple of surprise moved through the hall. Many had expected a formal union to begin immediately. Instead, the emperor stepped back, giving the floor to Saris. Saris looked around the hall. She had spoken to crowds before, but this time was different. This time, she was not speaking as a princess following orders. She was speaking as someone who had faced danger and found her own strength. She began calmly. "A decree, no matter how powerful, should not shape the life of a person. Courage does not come from obeying commands. It comes from making choices." The nobles leaned forward, listening closely. "When my ship was attacked, it was a human ship, small, untested, and alone, that saved us. Not because they were rewarded, not because they were forced, but because they chose to help." She glanced at Elias, warmth in her eyes. I have walked through danger with Captain Elias Wren. I have seen how humans think differently, how they act with honesty and bravery. Our alliance with humanity should be based on trust, not obligation. And so, she paused, took a breath, and spoke clearly. I refuse the imposed betrothal. The hall erupted in murmurs, but Saris raised her hand and continued. I refuse it not because I doubt Captain Elias. I refuse it because I want the freedom to choose, and because he deserves the same freedom. Elias stepped forward now, standing beside her. His voice was steady, strong. I came here expecting to return home after a diplomatic rescue. I never thought I would be placed in a role of political importance. But I learned something here. I learned that Saris is strong, brave, and far more than a symbol for her people. He looked toward the Emperor, then back to Saris. I don't want a future shaped by a decree. I want a future built on choice. The same way I chose to help her on that day. The hall was silent, the crowd listening with new respect. Elias continued. So, I also refuse the decree. Not because I wish to step away from Saris, but because we both deserve the right to decide our own path. Saris felt her heart lighten. She had feared that this moment would spark anger or disappointment. But instead, she felt something else growing inside the hall. A slow, rising sense of admiration. The Emperor stepped forward again. His expression was unreadable for a moment, then it softened. You both show what true leadership is, he said. Not obedience, but integrity. He raised his voice so all could hear. I withdraw the decree. Whatever path you choose, together or separately, will be respected. This alliance between humans and Aurelians will stand, not because of a forced marriage, but because of the courage you showed. Relief spread across Saris's face. Elias felt a quiet, calm, settle inside his chest. The hall erupted in applause, genuine applause, grounded in respect. As the ceremony ended and people began to disperse, Elias and Saris stepped aside to a quiet corner. The sunlight from the tall windows fell softly across them. So, Elias said with a small smile, what now? Saris looked at him with calm certainty. Now, we continue standing together. Not because we must, but because we want to. Elias returned the smile. I'd like that. A lot. And as they walked out of the hall side by side, free to choose their own path, the galaxy quietly shifted around them, forever changed by the courage of a human and the heart of a princess. He paused, then spoke more quietly. You have proven something important not only about loyalty, but about trust between our species. Saris and Elias stood side by side as the Emperor looked at them. The alliance will continue, he said, and whatever choices you make next, they will be yours. Elias and Saris exchanged a long, meaningful look. They had run together, fought together, and survived together. Something had changed between them, something real, something neither of them could deny now. And they both knew the story was far from over.